Now, in the second hour of the show, it's Wednesday, which means it's all about consumer matters. And we are circling back to two topics we've covered previously in today's show. A follow-up on the issue of the stolen laptop story we covered last week, including a look at really how stolen electronics are actually tracked. And then we are also going to circle back to a story we covered last year about peeling paint on a particular range of Hyundai. Last week, we shared a stolen laptop story. This week, we're going to look deeper into how stolen laptops are actually tracked and find out what questions we should ask if we are considering buying a supposedly reconditioned laptop. And then it's 8 months since we broke the story of the peeling paint on a particular series of Hyundai i20s. And unfortunately, the brand's promise to make good hasn't been universally honored, shall we say. Wendy's going to update us on a couple of case studies that we've had to chase a little further. And I've already got some WhatsApps coming in from others in the same boat. So definitely a story worth revisiting. And if you want to join the conversation, remember you can call us on 021 446 0567 or send a WhatsApp to 072 567 1567. Welcome back, Wendy.
Thank you, Pippa. Good to be here.
Last week, we heard from UCT academic Tessa Dowling about how her purchase of a second-hand laptop turned into quite a nightmare. Just for the sake of those who missed it, Tessa came home to find a tracking company standing on her doorstep demanding that she hand over the stolen device that she was using. And of course, she was able to whip out a receipt and say, well, it's not stolen. Here's the receipt from when I bought it. So not only was she affronted by the suggestion that she had been party to a theft, she also had some very major concerns about the kind of personal information that tracking company had access to, including websites she had accessed, purchases she had made on that device. And to make matters worse, she initially struggled to get a refund from the shop which had sold it to her. Now, at least on that front, all is well that ends well, because we can confirm, Tessa let us know a couple of days ago, the refund is in the bank. But she did still have those lingering questions around how much of her personal information had been handed to those security guards effectively, and why they needed that level of detail to simply retrieve this device. Wendy, it really sent you down quite a wormhole, didn't it?
It did indeed. So, as we shared last week, the security company representatives who arrived on Tessa's doorstep were from a company called Capital Air. They had been hired by a tracking company called CTrack, who in turn had been subcontracted by NetTrace. They take their lead from Absolute Software, which is an international company based in Vancouver, Canada. So, as you can see, there are a lot of people in this chain. Yeah. And this week, I spoke to Richard Hardy of NetTrace on the phone about Tessa's concerns. And this is what I can share about that conversation. He said, I've had a look at the report summary. There are no banking details shared. The image in question, and that was, I think, Cara, Tessa's sister, took an image on one of the security guards' phones that he was saying, showing her how they got to her door, essentially. He said the image in question was a delivery invoice linking the order made on the laptop to the address where the laptop was being used. No banking details are shared ever. He says what we need is a name, a contact number, work address, and home address so that we can positively identify the person that we need to collect the machine from. And he did say to me that in almost all cases, the person that the technology leads them to is not the thief. Yeah. It's somebody who, like Tessa, has unwittingly bought a laptop that sold as reconditioned, usually. That was previously stolen, yes, and then passed on into the retail chain. He says we do have GPS tracking, but it's not enough, because in some cases it could lead to a 10-story building, and then where do we go from there? We have no way of knowing where the person is.
Okay, so you do need some information to lead you there. So what did Richard explain to you about how the process works, Wendy?
Okay, so he says when your laptop gets stolen, and a lot of them are as a result of remote jamming. It's still a thing. You press your remote, you think you've locked your car, you don't check, and actually someone's jammed the signal and your car is actually not locked as you walk away, and they can help themselves to what's in your boot, and what is often in people's boots on the way to work, on the way back, is a nice laptop.
Okay.
So, and also hijacking. So often the laptop will be in the car, and so they need to get rid of this device somehow. They want some money for it. So you go to the police, you make an affidavit, you get a case number. The investigating officer reports the theft to NetTrace, and they are now working with C-Track as well. It gets logged on their system. They then hand over to Absolute Software for the actual investigation. So they have the means to then track the computer, the laptop, and who is using it.
And we'll talk about how they do that in just a moment. But
Yeah.
the key thing he said to you is that the next step is when that laptop is connected to the internet, Wendy.
Yes.
That's the important moment.
Yes, that needs to happen. And then they can start the monitoring.
So how do they do that? What are they actually? So, okay, you've reported it stolen. The theft is then logged with the tracking company who goes looking for it. How are they finding it? What are they actually monitoring?
I did say to Richard Hardy that please talk to me like I'm 5. You can't say 10 because they're too tech savvy already. It's maybe 5.
Okay.
And I don't know that I've got it completely because this was a phone conversation and not an email exchange. But okay, he said with most, and I'll get to what most means, with most original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, the ability to track the device is built into the motherboard. He says it's not something that can be removed if someone wipes the laptop. Do you remember we had a caller last week who works in the industry and says that before that laptop was sold to Tessa, it should have been, all the software should have been wiped, removed, whatever, and I'm concerned this is a big problem. No.
It's not software is what you're saying.
It's not possible to do it because what Richard referred to it as is an unbreakable connection to the device. So it's built in at the time of manufacture. Even if you replace the hard drive, it's still going to be there. Okay?
Okay, so you can wipe it fully, take all the information out, rebuild the machine, replace the hard drive, but the minute it connects to the internet again, they are going to be able to locate it.
Absolutely.
Sure.
There's one notable exception, and that's an Apple. Apple does not allow any third-party application to take control of its devices. So if your laptop is an Apple, Absolute Software cannot, in the normal course of events, trace it. Richard said the only way we can recover an Apple is by notifying Apple that whichever device with this MAC address has been stolen. And he says there are some instances where Apple and Absolute Software work together to recover. But as a general rule, Apple is outside of this process.
Okay, so if it's not an Apple, they are able to immediately locate it the minute it's connected to the internet. If it is an Apple, you've got to hope that Apple will agree to work with them to help find it. Okay.
So that was a big learning for me as someone who uses an Apple. Okay, so this is obviously one of the dangers of buying a reconditioned device that and an intermediary wouldn't know that it's been stolen or be able to access this hardware to know. So it sits at a very high level, and the players down the chain aren't aware of it.
And as you said, so the recovery team arrives on the doorstep of the end user, who is in most cases an unwitting accomplice,
Almost all
who
cases,
didn't know
yes.
that they were dealing with stolen goods. Do they get the police involved if it's patently obvious?
Yes.
I mean, like it was in this case, Tessa was able to produce a receipt saying, here's the store I bought it from, here's the amount I paid for it. I didn't steal it. I bought it from this shop.
But
do they get the police involved?
If the person's resisting handing it over, as I would imagine it would be quite natural to do. I don't know who you are. This could be a scam. We've got so many in this country. And then they will call the police and they will be able to go into, well, it was reported stolen. Yeah, this is, the device with the serial number has been reported stolen, and take it from there.
Okay, so what about the liability of the seller? Because you said there, the intermediaries don't necessarily know that it's been stolen. But is there a point of obligation anywhere in that sales chain, Wendy, where somebody needs to check that?
Richard said that they should be asking the police, giving the serial number and saying, has this device been reported stolen?
The seller or the buyer?
The seller. Yeah, the seller. So he said, but not all of them do it. And he said, and to be honest, there could be a case of the police in a particular case not being sufficiently efficient to want to actually cooperate.
Sure. Okay.
So he says that is a bit of a grey area. But if you're going to buy one of these devices that's called reconditioned, rebuilt, whatever, you should certainly ask the supplier if they've attempted to check whether because this is a thing, right? This is how stolen laptops are making their way back into the marketplace. You should ask the seller, have you checked?
With
at least
police.
raise the issue of the possibility of the machine being stolen, and then ask the question, if down the line I have some security guards coming to my door wanting to take back what they can prove is a stolen device, how are you going to respond? And so you get that out up front.
Good thinking. What about, is anybody sort of compiling a database? You would hope that the police would have the foresight to do that, but I guess they've got so much on their plate, Wendy, they can't.
That way. But I spoke to remember, just minutes before we came on air, I spoke to Charles from C-Track, and he mentioned this data track. Richard did also mention it, but said don't say too much about it because it's a bit premature. But that will be amazing, so that there will be a database, an international database, where we as consumers would then have the opportunity, and everyone else in the chain would have the opportunity to check.
That would be fantastic.
Wouldn't it?
So you could, in the store, pick up your phone and say, I'm typing in the serial number to check.
And that would exclude Apples at this point.
It's not going to be foolproof, but it's at least some protection.
Yes.
So what else can we do to protect ourselves in the meantime? Because, Wendy, I mean, as you said, these reconditioned machines can be up to half the price of a new one. It's a very tempting prospect, particularly in the current financial climate. What other steps can we take to make sure that we are not accidentally buying stolen goods?
Well, I think other than asking them, have they taken any steps to verify the serial number and to check whether it has been previously stolen, and also to ask them about, look, in Tessa's case, the company that sold her laptop had been working with that supplier for 10 years and not had an incident. So it's quite possible that they also unwittingly bought it. We don't know. Then this is incidentally why it can sometimes take up to 3 years for them to actually trace one of these stolen laptops, because every time it's stolen, the investigation has to start all over again. And we had that case, Somerset West case.
Let's just circle back to that, because this is an interesting one here, and it raises another point of protection. So, every time it moves through another set of hands,
the investigation goes cold, and they need to start again. When that next buyer then connects to the internet.
But Wendy, so what Richard did say to you is, if you can protect your own laptop against use after theft, if you like, by purchasing software that you can activate, that if it is stolen will prevent the thief from using it, but will not wipe your data. So this circles back to that case we covered a couple of years ago now. And if you don't mind me just recapping, Alex Scholler from Somerset West spoke to us. It was an extraordinary case, and I'm sure listeners will remember this. He had bought a Hewlett-Packard laptop on Take-A-Lot in November 2019. He had been using it for 3 full years when suddenly, out of the blue, while he was busy working on that device, a message popped up on his screen saying, hey, this is a stolen laptop. This laptop was stolen from the Department of Agriculture, and it prevented him from doing anything further on the machine. And it said, contact this person. And sure enough, when he checked and he phoned that person whose name and number appeared on the screen, it was indeed the Department of Agriculture saying, yes, this is our laptop that was stolen several years ago. And Wendy, I mean, we were baffled at the time as to where that message came from.
Yes, now we know.
You now understand. Tell us more.
Yes, so when I mentioned that case, both Charles and Richard said, oh yeah, that was us. So they sell this to government departments because they aren't insured. So they need to get their devices back.
Ouch. The government departments aren't insured.
No, it's not for these devices anyway. That's what I was told. And so this is what happens. In Richard's case, it took 2 years, and he was just explaining that laptop could have gone through many hands in the meantime. And what it does is it disables the device for the user, but it retains all the data. So it's not like you've lost everything. And then you have to go through the steps. But that case was particularly bizarre because you recall he came to me because Take-A-Lot wouldn't give him a refund. They were treating it like he wanted to return a laptop for no particular reason, not that it was. And then they said, but you've modified it. Yeah, he added extra memory, which was a huge Packard, if I remember. And so it went and it was my case of the year because it went backwards and forwards. They kept saying, okay, we will refund. And then another silo in the company that hadn't got the memo then reverted back. And at one point they told us that they removed that seller, that marketplace seller from their platform. And then they said to Alex that the supplier was willing to replace the laptop.
Oh no, come on.
The one who was removed
I'd
from
forgotten
the
that.
platform. It was a bizarre case. But this now we've come full circle, understanding what's happened. So in some cases, I don't know if it's available for individuals, but certainly at corporate level, there are companies that then buy this technology, for want of a better word, and with the end result that somebody that down the line, the person that's using that laptop then has this disabling pop-up thing happen.
I wonder if anybody listening has that protection in place, and if you do, if you want to tell
Yeah,
us,
I'd love to.
did you get it on an individual level or do you get it through work? What product is it that you should be asking for? Because I've got several people already WhatsApping, say, where do we buy this?
Yeah,
So we're talking specifically about the product that, if your laptop is stolen, will allow you to remotely disable the device while not losing your data, and then allow the recovery process. You'll eventually then hopefully get your machine back. If anybody knows more or is already using it and would like to tell us about it, you are very welcome to send us a WhatsApp to 072-567-1567. Sharon also just messaging in to say, if you want to buy a second-hand Apple, you can check with an Apple store if that computer serial number is on their stolen list. So that's an extra method of protection. Sharon, thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, so that's where we got to with the stolen laptop story. Tessa has been refunded for her purchase, which is a huge relief. And Wendy, thanks for that interesting insight into the retrieval process that kicked in. After the eyewitness news, we are going to circle back to the story of peeling paint on Hyundais. Right, we are circling back to another story, which is a follow-up on a case that we covered some time ago, or rather cases multiple, because it was July last year we shared the story of thousands of Hyundai drivers who had been experiencing problems with their paintwork. If you recall, the vehicle in question was an i20, and Hyundai acknowledged that there had been a defect in the particular batch of paintwork. This happened at their manufacturing plant in Chennai in India, and effectively, to cut a very long story short, the protective UV element of the paint was not included in the one batch of cars that was sprayed. And obviously that left the affected cars at the mercy of sun damage. Not the best news for us in a country like South Africa. No. And initially, they were refusing to cover the cost of repairing that problem on cars which were already out of warranty. So if your Hyundai was in warranty when it started peeling, they would fix it for you. But we had several people coming to us saying, my car's out of warranty. I've been impacted by this and they won't help. I'm having to go and spend my own money paying somebody else to respray the car. And Wendy, when you looked into this last year, you scored a really substantial win because you got Hyundai to acknowledge and undertake that they needed to help.
I'm not going to take too much credit there. They had quietly started to do it.
Already?
Yes.
Okay.
They had, but what they hadn't done was make that public. They hadn't put a notice out in general, and they weren't getting hold of people to let them know. It was as they came into dealerships to complain. So, and it was quite hit and miss. Some dealerships were absolutely, this is being covered, and others were no. And many people who went right up to Hyundai SA, to head office, were told absolutely not, your car's out of warranty, and they then couldn't deal with driving on such an unsightly car, so they paid 4,000 or 5,000 rand, whatever the case was, to get it, depending how bad the peeling was, to get it repaired. And so I then asked the question in last August, are you going to proactively be getting hold of these people that you turned away and invite them in? And if they've already, as some had, paid for the job themselves, or are you going to be inviting them to send you their invoices and bank details so that you can refund them? And they said yes, and I had quite a few cases where that didn't happen. I'm sure it did happen in some cases, but I heard from people where it hadn't happened. And then more recently, I've been hearing from people with older cars older than 10 years, so 2015 in some cases, models 2014. The problem didn't occur, I think, in vehicles before 2012.
Okay.
2013. So we're talking about a few years there. It's only sort of 2014, 2015 models mainly. Those owners have come forward to say, no, they were told your car's over 10 years. I've been interacting with Hyundai saying, what is going on here? You told me. I had a phone conversation with one of the execs, and he told me that they were quite, because obviously they've got to get Chennai, India, that plant to pay. It's It's not the local
Not Hyundai South
OEMs.
Africa's problem.
No,
Yes,
not at all.
yeah.
But they had been paying out of their budgets because there was some slow assistance at the beginning. Anyway, they were quite thrilled because they had convinced India to say, okay, we will look at fixing the cars over 10 years. I have to say that over 10 years, many cars many cars develop paint issues that have nothing to do with this defect. They were garaged, there was maybe some chemical contaminants. So that's why cars, they do have to be inspected to ascertain whether it's this particular defect of this car did not get UV.
Were you
UV
part?
labor.
And they know which batch it was, which dates, which year of manufacture, which model, etc. were
affected. It went on for quite a few years, which was the not so great part. So there are a lot of cars globally that are affected, and not only but mostly white i20s.
Mostly white i20s.
Few silver, light. It's the light.
The light color.
Yeah, the light colors. Okay, and I'm picking up from covering this issue that it's the coastal areas, possibly with humidity, or I'm not sure. Just it's mostly the coastal areas where this is happening, and quite a few cases in Cape Town. So I went back to say, but you said older than 10 years is now fine, but I've heard from quite a few people who have, actually a few in Joburg as well, so maybe not specifically coastal, who've been turned away and told, sorry, your car's too old, your car's older than 10 years, there is no help to be had. So a lot of them have been fixed as a result. One of them was Alexandra Ware. She had hers was 2012. Okay, so it goes back, I think, nothing before 2012. She was told, okay, fine, bring your car in. An hour before she was due to do so, they said, sorry, your car's not included. Your car's older than 10 years. Got involved. Her car's since been done. And more recently, I took up a case on behalf of
Connor Coyles.
His car was also why can't I find
It's a 2014 at the top of page 5. A 2014 white i20.
Yeah,
I've got in my notes.
That's the typical
yes.
range that I'm looking at when people are complaining. He said, Hyundai have told me that they're not interested in vehicles older than 10 years and they refuse to even consider repairing it under goodwill. I was quite plainly told to go to the Ombudsman and complain there.
Sure. Okay, so you took up his case. What happened?
I did. He got back to me last week, gratifyingly, to say that he'd received an email from Hyundai South Africa saying his repair had been approved. He took the car in on Monday this week, and he's been told that the process will take a week.
Okay, so just before we recap what you need to do if you're still in this position, I want to share a few more messages that have come through on the WhatsApp line here. Russ saying, we have a 2021 Hyundai H100 with peeling paint on the roof. The dealership originally said they would repair it, but then later changed their mind and said it wasn't covered under warranty as it was on the dome, as mentioned in the vehicle book. Have you ever heard of that exception before?
I haven't. I would like to take that up. That's obviously outside of the issue that we're talking about.
Yes, because that's a new model.
Defect. Yes, it's a new model, and it's not an i20, clearly. It's a lot bigger than that. So you say H1. It's an
H1. Russ, so if you'd like to send Wendy an email to investigate that for you, please do. It's consumer@knowler.co.za. Consumer@knowler, KNOWLER.co.za. And then Kathy, hers is a 2017 white Hyundai Tucson with paint chipping and peeling off. And her branch told her to contact customer care. She said, Hyundai repaired a small dent and my car came back with a different shade of white on the bumper. I repeatedly complained. They argued black was blue. I gave up and lived with it. But I'm now having to pay 13,000 Rand to repair the bumper and chipped paint. She does add, though, otherwise, a stunning vehicle and excellent service. But paint seems to be an issue.
Oh, that's another one that's outside of this particular issue. I'm not quite sure what to make of that, because she was talking about paint and then said they were going to repair a dent. Well, why would that be?
So she said when they repaired, they obviously had to respray.
Yeah, and then they created
during that repair. No, during the repair of the dent, they had to touch up the paint.
I had another case of that. Her name
and had a mismatched shade.
Jeanette Govender in Johannesburg. There'd been a delay of around 6 months. Oof. Backwards and forwards. I got involved. Finally, she got a booking. Please have your car assessed. She had the car assessed. No, we need more photos. Take it in again. Then it got repaired, and taking off the panels, they also caused damage.
Oh gosh!
So the car had to go in very recently, in fact, to get that repaired. Well, obviously that's not That's the paint shop that did that. But I mean, one woman just went through such a lot, and hopefully that's finally over for her.
Okay, so Russ in particular, please, if you'd like to mail Wendy with the details. Okay, so both of those cases are a little bit outside the parameters of the specific we're talking about here. So Wendy, just to circle back to the specifics, if you have a Hyundai i20 that is of sort of the last, the 2011 to 2020,
I'd say 2012 to around 2017, 18. I'm not sure when it quite ended, but around that's the range we're looking at.
Okay, so if you have an i20 in that range and you are experiencing peeling paint, please be aware of the fact that you should at the very least go and have it assessed by the dealership.
Yeah, they might find it's unrelated, but it's definitely worth a shot.
And you don't have to pay for that assessment, Wendy, is that correct?
No.
Okay, so if you would like to investigate that, you need to send an email to their customer service department, which is iCare, and that's spelled the letter I, CARE, iCare at hyundai.co.za to register your case, and they will then assess whether it is linked to this particular batch of the spray that was faulty. And again, just to emphasize what Wendy has said, it's not the only cause of peeling paint. There are issues of neglect, wear and tear, chemical damage, exposure, etc., which might come into play as well. And if that is the case, you're not entitled to repair. But if you are found to be part of this batch and the peeling is indeed due to the incorrect paint having been applied, please do push to have it taken in and looked at and have it made good on. Okay, Eugene, it sounds like paint is an issue. Here's a Eugene saying it's a 2015 Hyundai Santa Fe SUV. The paint on the bonnet and bumper is fading. That's a 10-year-old car.
It's a different issue, paint fading versus peeling.
Okay.
We don't know whether the car was garage, whether it was exposed to the Cape summer sun for years on end. I can't say.
It's impossible to know.
No.
I do like this comment from Andrew, though. It's actually so apt. Andrew writing in to say, I'm really surprised Hyundai don't fix all cars with paint problems as quickly as possible. Cars with bad paint jobs are such a bad advertisement for the brand's quality. I still notice Toyota Conquests driving around with chipping paint on the rear door, he says. It looks terrible and it negates anything Toyota ever says about their quality. I really think that's such a valid point.
What was the part he mentioned? Which vehicle?
So Toyota Conquest paint chipping on the rear door.
Oh my gosh, those cars are so
old. Yeah. But I take your point, Andrew. It's such a bad. Yeah. You talk about somebody being a walking advertisement for their own product. This is the counterpart of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Toyotas especially, they go back so many years, and they're so popular, and they go forever. And you see them with a very wide array of paint and bodywork issues, but I mean, I don't think you can pin that on the manufacturer. These cars are so old and they've been through a lot. I mean, no, sorry, I'm not. I do motoring journalism as well. I don't have any brief for any manufacturer, but I think that's asking a lot for a really, really old car such as a Conquest to not be presenting with any paint issues. And to suggest that that's the manufacturer's problem, I don't know if that's fair.
I don't know if there was a notorious issue of rear doors on Conquest at the time that we don't know about.
If that happened within the first few years of life, and
that's a different story.
Issue and all of them that wasn't properly addressed, that is a different story. But yeah, I mean, I've got a particular interest in the number of an array of old Toyotas on our roads, and so I old Toyota spot a lot.
Okay.
So there's a lot of paint issues out there. So if this was a specific one, my apologies, a specific defect that I've forgotten about. But yeah, old cars generally tend to have not so perfect paint jobs in some cases.
Fairness to the dealer, okay. Few minutes left, and Wendy, an interesting story in from Joan about perfume. She writes to say, I bought some fragrances from Perfume Hut in late February, taking advantage of a buy two, get a third free offer. And she says she did receive all 3 bottles, but she's not happy with what was inside them. Her description is they advertised that they provide affordable designer alternatives with up to 100% fragrance accuracy. but the perfumes are fake. It's more like water. She wants her 1,700 Rand purchase price refunded, but she's had no luck getting feedback from the supplier. Now, I did a quick check online during the break, and 23 reviews on the site I looked at, of which 22 of them were one-star reviews, all with virtually identical feedback that what was sent to me had virtually no scent, and what was there faded within a minute of putting it on. So it's too watered down. The essence of the fragrance has been lost. And they all said the same thing that Joan is complaining about, that we tried asking for an exchange, asking for a refund. We don't get any feedback. And interestingly, some of them saying we do keep getting their promotional emails inviting us to buy more. Have you ever come across Perfume Hut before?
I haven't. I did do some digging when I first saw this, and I neglected to send the email off, which I will remedy ASAP. But under the company's FAQs, why are they so cheap? The answer is all our products come straight from our factories in Belgium and France. We've managed to secure a special batch of designer scents that have been rejected due to certain reasons, which can include minor packaging flaws, not an issue, difference in packaging, again, recipe change or misprints, but the fragrances themselves are still genuine, albeit parallel imports. And then, was there anything addressing the actual fragrance itself? And the same website says it can happen in the case of imports from other countries that the concentration of the perfume may differ to that of the local version that you find in your regular retailer. This is because they are made in different manufacturing plants. They use different alcohol bases around the world. For example, Europe uses a potato-based alcohol, vodka. France uses grape-based alcohol, and the USA uses a grain-based alcohol. Okay, I didn't know any of that until now, if that's in fact true. But I don't know that they could put down virtually smelling of nothing at all to, well, it was made in a different manufacturing plant as a parallel import. It wasn't meant for this market, so it's a different plant. I don't think you're going to get that kind of variation. No brand is going to survive if that's how they're operating.
If the product is that vastly different from one segment to the next.
So I need to obviously give them the right of reply and dig a bit more. That's as much as I could glean around the fragrance issue on their website.
Okay, so Joan, thank you for raising this, and Wendy will immediately send off that query to them for a response from them beyond what is offered on the website there. And if anybody else listening has had a similar experience and would like to add your case to the email, please do mail us. Wendy, you want to add something else?
One more paragraph that does relate to this on the company's website. Fragrances are also reformulated every so often, creating different vintages and batches. Hence, the same fragrance can differ in smell from one country to another, depending on where it was made or imported from. Therefore, in some instances, our fragrance may not last as long as the local version that you are used to. So they're obviously addressing a common complaint that they get. And I don't know that that explanation covers it.
It's good enough,
It's not good enough.
Okay, so definitely to be continued. And if you smell a rat with this one, sorry, I had to do it. If you've had experiences of a similar nature and would like to add your experience to what Wendy is going to send to them for feedback, please send an email. For that matter, if you want to raise a case with Wendy, the email address to use is consumer@knowler.co.za, spelled KNOWLER. Please do be mindful of the fact that Wendy works alone without any administrative help. She cannot possibly take on every single case that is brought to her, but we do our very best to tackle what we can, and particularly to look for clusters of complaints about a similar issue that we can bring to the show. So please do be mindful of that. But consumer@knowler.co.za. Please do also put the words Cape Talk somewhere in the subject line. Wendy, thanks. We'll chat again next week, Wednesday.